Mille grazie per sua introduzione gentile. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Buongiorno. All right, that was great. How about a little bit more Italian lessons this morning, okay? So, I know that there's some Italians here, love the name Lovecchio. I know that there's at least 2 people here who are related to Pasquales or have them as friends. So why don't you help us out with one of these words we're going to learn today. Look up here on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Coraggio. Hey, that's pretty good. Okay, I know we have a lot of Italian wannabes who like pizza. Put your hand up like this. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Coraggio. Molto bene, molto bene. So what is the big deal about Coraggio and myasthenia gravis? Well, when I was 20 years old, I was robust. I ran 1 to 3 miles every single day, and I was going to be a medical doctor. I was going to care for people my entire life and help people out. And when I was in the middle of my pre-medical career, it was the summer, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was locked in a pain ball. It was pain deep down in my joints. And I went to our family doctor, and he took some tests, told me wait a week. You know how that feels, wait a week. I'm a teenager then, you know, the teenage drama queen. You might have bone cancer, you might have. So I went back in a week, and our family doctor said, you have rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought, oh, arthritis, that doesn't sound so bad. You know, some of my Italian aunts would complain that their hands hurt when they were kneading the pasta dough. It just wasn't so bad. So I said, tell me what I need to do, because in the fall, I'm going back to school because I'm going to be a doctor. Nothing can stop me. And that family doctor said to me, no, Lisa, you have a severe form of rheumatoid arthritis, and it will cripple you. And you will not be a doctor. But don't worry, honey. We have nice institutions that they'll take you and they'll take care of you, so no worries. Okay, I got in my car and I drove to the matriarch of the family, Nonna. Nonna in Italian is grandmother, and here is my grandmother right here. And I went into the house and we sat down on the couch and I said, Nonna, the doctor said I won't be a doctor. The doctor said I will be crippled. Now, you know, a lot of people have a picture of these Italians that my Nonna would have, flail her arms, lots of crying, lots of weeping. But it wasn't like that. We both sat very silently, and Nonna put her hand on top of mine and patted it gently and said quietly, almost in a whisper, Coraggio, Lisa, coraggio. And I didn't really fully understand what Nonna meant by those words. Now, any of you who are from southern Italy know there's this genetic trait. It's called testa dura or capatosta, hardhead, stubborn. So, number 1, I have teenage rebellion, right? Number 2, I've got the testa dura, that kind of genetic trait. So I'm going to prove that doctor wrong. And I moved to California where the weather was a lot better for arthritis. They had a lot of alternative, integrative medicine out there. And my mother lived out there, and her mother, my Hungarian grandmother. And I proved that doctor wrong. I finished undergrad, but it was a really severe form of rheumatoid arthritis. And can you believe that in those 3 years until I graduated, it had eaten all the cartilage between my knees, just that short of time? So there I was, I had graduated, but I ended up for several months just locked, kind of curled up in a fetal position in a bed. And then I was able to get around in a wheelchair. And my mother and grandmother took care of me. And this is Mother's Day week, so I'm going to say something very important here. I never, ever felt a loss of dignity, because the bathing, the feeding, the toileting of an adult daughter, that's what they did, because they were mothers and they loved me, and they never made me feel like it was anything else than, of course, what they would do for me. And so after about 2 years of this way, I was really getting better, and I could get in my wheelchair in our small apartment, and I could use my heels, and I could get around it by just backing myself around in the apartment. And Christmas was coming on us, and we thought, well, we would take a trip out of state. And as it got closer to Christmas, my mom had a small hatchback, and it was before the Americans with Disabilities Act, when there were a lot of accommodations in public places. So the more we thought about it, in order to go on the trip, we would have to put in this big clunky wheelchair. It was a manual wheelchair. And then when we put in the luggage, and then we would put in the presents, and then we could go. But anytime I wanted to stop to eat or I needed to use a restroom, think about it. We would have to stop the car, get out the presents, get out the luggage, get out the wheelchair. And so it was, you know, I have the Italian Catholic guilt, and so it wasn't so hard for me to say, you know what, I'm just going to stay here at home. You guys go. We'll celebrate Christmas when you get back. We put all the presents around the tree. And there was a family friend. She was around my age. She was so much fun. And she was going to stay with me because she didn't want to make the travel back for Christmas either. So, wouldn't you know, my mom and grandmother leave, and the great family friend who's a lot of fun decided she couldn't be away from her family either, and she left. Now, that was before the day of cell phones, and my mother didn't know how long she would be driving each night, so I didn't have a way of contacting her, but I thought, you know, this is kind of cool. I've never been home by myself in this apartment ever in the past 2 years, and I wasn't even able to reach a cup or a bowl, so the friend got down a bowl and a cup, and we thought about some things I might need, and then I was on my own. And so I was alone to get the phone call from an emergency room in a different state. And the person on the other line said, I'm sorry, but your mother was killed in a car accident. And your grandmother probably won't make it either, but she's in the emergency room, and we need your permission to rush her to emergency surgery to see if we can save her life. That was the biggest karate kick to my soul that I had ever gotten. I had always just bargained with God. God, if you just let my alarm go off, let me swing my legs over the bed, stand up and walk, I'll do anything. I'll be a nun. I will be the missionary. I'll give all my life to serving people in the medical field. Please don't let my mom be dead. The stress mounted and mounted, and I tried to plan the memorial service, and what could you say to capture this woman who's beautiful? She's about 6 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes. About 3 days later, determined that I was going to just tell everybody about this beautiful soul, this beautiful woman's life, somebody took my wheelchair and they wheeled me to the front of the chapel where the memorial service was and turned me around to face the audience. And I started to tell them how beautiful my mom was, and I wasn't going to cry because I didn't want to in any way make it not dignified. And my voice started sounding like that, out of nowhere. And I think most people thought I was just getting emotional. But for me, I knew that wasn't just getting emotional. And about a week later was the Rose Bowl, and here I'm living in California, and I'm a huge University of Michigan Wolverine football fan. And God bless them, I had some friends who had tickets to the Rose Bowl. They got me a ticket also. They came, for those of you who know Los Angeles, they drove across Los Angeles to the valley where I was living, put me in my wheelchair in there, brought me to the Rose Bowl, got me in my wheelchair into the stands. And you know, what a great thing they did for me, don't you think? And so I'm the kind, I don't like to talk during football because I'm watching football. So I'm watching the linebackers. They're getting down. They're getting in their three-point stance right on the line. Watching. All of a sudden, there's 2 white lines on the field where there was 1 white line. And I scrunched my eyes as hard as I could. I opened them, and the 1 white line was back again. Okay, that was weird, right? The quarterback comes back. He's got his arm up like this. I'm watching. What's he going to do with the ball? Is he going to tuck it? Is he going to throw it? All of a sudden, there's 2 footballs where there's 1 football. And I scrunched my eyes again as hard as I could. I opened them, and there was 1 football again. The friend who took me was one of my nursing student friends, and I wanted to tell her, but then I thought, I can't tell her because they're going to think I'm a hypochondriac, right? Think about this. I'm in school with them. She's a classmate. I'm going to be a doctor. Then I'm in a wheelchair for several years, and then my mom dies in an accident. Then my grandmother dies in the accident. What, I'm going to tell her now I have a neuromuscular disease? I think I do. they're going to think that I'm just either too emotional or hypochondriac. So shortly after that, I had a friend, and he called me and said, you know, I know you've been through a lot, why don't we go to lunch? Now, something I want to tell you about this friend. First of all, he's Italian-American. Second of all, he's a really nice-looking Italian-American, my age. But the best of all is he's a single, cute Italian-American guy, right? So I want to look my best. So I wheel my wheelchair backward into the bathroom. I'm going to put on my mascara because I want to look nice. And I've done this hundreds of times in my life. And I lift up my arm to put on the mascara, flump. It's as if this arm has now been 100 pounds. And then I tried to brush my hair with the other arm. Floop, that falls down. Try to hold one with the other. Boom, they're all 100 pounds. I'm like, you know what? I can't believe you're nervous. He's just a friend. Just go. And so at that time, this thing called the fruit smoothie, yogurt in it, was just getting popular in the Valley. And thank goodness, because he chose this little cafe in the Valley where all the Valley girls got their smoothies. And I'm thinking, great. Because you know what else I was hiding from everybody? I wasn't able to chew or swallow anymore, but I wasn't going to tell anybody. So I thought, whatever he orders, I'm going to order the smoothie. So I ordered the smoothie. I can't tell you how much we had in common. He was raised with the same Italian Catholic values that I did. We were having a great time. I'm laughing, bulbar muscles. I'm eating, bulbar facial muscles. I'm drinking. I take a big slurp of the Slurpee, pull it up through the straw into my mouth, and I look, and he's got this look of horror on his face. What? And then I felt it drip, drip on my hand. It had dribbled. The smoothie had dribbled out the corner of my mouth onto my hand in front of the cute single Italian-American guy. And it was that humiliation that got me to call my rheumatologist. And I called my rheumatologist and I said, you know, you're probably never going to believe this, but let me tell you what I think I have. And when I was doing my pre-medical studies, I remembered seeing this journal article. I was one of those science nerds. I'd read every kind of journal article about science and medicine I could get my hands on. There was this one article, and it had this black and white photograph in it of Aristotle Onassis. And Aristotle Onassis in this picture had his eyelid taped to his forehead. And if for no other reason than seeing that photo in that journal article, I thought I knew what I had. And my doctor called me a week later and said, you were right, you have myasthenia gravis. Now, I've already made part of my confession to you. I waited too long. Doctors do not like it when you're not chewing, you're not swallowing, and you're not breathing that well. So that was a trip straight to the hospital. I was hospitalized and given plasmapheresis. As many of you know, dialyzes out some of the bad antibodies in hopes we get some of the bad antibodies out to try and bring me out of crisis. And after a couple of weeks, I got out of the crisis state, but I still needed plasmapheresis at least 3 times a week. What to do? Think about it. I hadn't walked in years. Obviously, I haven't driven in years. I don't even own a car. The people who loved me and drove me everywhere, they were just killed. They weren't even on this planet anymore. So the social worker was really kind at the hospital. She figured out a way for me to go from the hospital, move into the nursing home across the street. I could live in the nursing home. They could puree my foods for me. The transportation van could come from the hospital to the nursing home, and I could go back and forth 3 times a week and get my plasmapheresis that way. And that was really great in that regard. But I want to tell you something, that back in those days in the nursing home, or maybe it's because everybody in there was older and had dementia and didn't talk, there were no telephones in the room. And at night, the nurses would come and they would shut my lights and they would shut the door, and the cries from the patients with dementia would die down, and those mind tormentors would start working. I wasn't in medical school. I wasn't helping save the world. People were having to care for me. I didn't have my new house with the white picket fence and my new husband and the new babies that all my college friends had. The worst of all was that I had read the state police report from my mom's accident, and I had read the coroner's report. And it kept playing in my mind in that dark night over and over again. And I remember one night, in the middle of the night, I just screamed out to God, God, help me! Help me! I'm sliding down a dark, slimy vortex. I can't grab on any longer. I'm afraid I can't pull myself out. And in that still and in that dark night, in the back of my mind, I hear this little voice, silently almost. Coraggio, Lisa, coraggio. And I got it. I got it. I knew what Nona was talking about. She was talking about the power of courage. And I thought about all those stories she told me about the old country. You know, this is the way Nona would tell me a story. She'd say, Lisa, do you remember Comadre Teresa? You know Comadre Teresa. 8 of 11 of her children lived. That Comadre Teresa. Now, let me tell you that the story had nothing to do with the fact that Comadre Teresa, which is just like her town, her neighbor in the town, that 3 of her children had died. It was not about that. It went on and on and on, just talking about something else about Comadre Teresa. Or she'd say, Lisa, you remember Zia Carmela? That's Aunt Carmela in English. And it wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that Zia Carmela, the big wave come, it'd take her little grandchild out to the ocean, and the wave come bring the child back, but the child wasn't living. It had nothing to do about grieving Aunt Carmela. No, it had something else to do with that. But as I thought about the stories that Nona told me, I thought about the fact that all of these women, all of these old world figures, they all had hardship in their life. But they all knew and expected that they were never going to escape it. There was going to be something. But they never let that hardship or obstacle ever be an excuse for not having relationships, for not loving, for not bringing family together for celebration. Never. So in that dark and still nursing home room at night, I knew that I had everything within me to carry forward, and it started with courage. And to tie in the theme of our conference right now, it's embracing myasthenia gravis. And I have something really important to tell you about, because this kind of embracing is embracing the hope and embracing the knowledge that you have the ability to live a fulfilled life with joy and with purpose. And why I'm telling you it's so important is because sometimes people believe embracing something means that you're almost resigning or giving up. And I have somebody very dear to me who was diagnosed with lupus, and she called the Lupus Foundation. And as the story goes, the woman at the Lupus Foundation said, you better start grieving everything you're going to lose with lupus. And that person latched on and focused. And they said, well, I can't work because this woman told me that I have to grieve. And I have to sleep during the day, and nobody checked to see the sleeping during the day was depression or something medical that could be addressed. Do not, I'm begging you, do not take embrace as focusing on the things you might not be able to do right now. Take that energy, make embracing be, what's my workaround to get to what I want to do? This is what brings me joy in life. This is what brings me purpose in life. If I need to work because that's going to give me health insurance, well, maybe I can ask my boss if I can if I can have an hour and a half for lunch, eat for a half an hour, and then take an hour rest, and then maybe work another half an hour. That's a workaround. Or maybe it's just that I need to reframe my attitude. I thought I would never be able to live without running 1 to 3 miles a day. It was a big emotional thing for me too. It was my release. It was a way of keeping my weight down. But if I just reframed that and said, hey, you know what, I have two legs here, and I can ride a stationary bike, and hey, this is just as good. See that embracing? It's different. It's embracing a workaround to get what gives me joy and purpose, and from there go forward. So let me say that it takes courage to have that positive attitude, right? Especially in the beginning, my myasthenia gravis, boy, it gave me a really hard time. And I would wake in the morning and my my head would be 100-pound weight on the pillow. And I don't know if anyone has experienced this, but it was really hard for me not to have a minor panic attack, because it's almost about opening your eyes and you're paralyzed. And I would just open my eyes and I would want to say, oh my gosh, I can't get out of bed, and who's going to find me, and who's going to help me, and if I can't go to work, I won't have health insurance. Or I would be able to sit up, but I would swing my legs over and stand up, and they were like limp linguine noodles, you know, just, and then I would start that, but I'd have to stop myself and do the courage reframe and say, now wait a second, Lisa, you're always wanting to spend a few extra minutes in bed when the alarm goes off anyway. You know, you keep Mestinon next to your bed with water, just take some Mestinon, you finally have an excuse to spend a few more minutes. You never have enough time to say your prayers. Start praying for someone else, so I'm not focusing on me. By the time I got done with my list of people I've told that I pray for them, hey, the Mestinon had kicked in, I could lift my head up, I could walk on my feet, and I could get in there. So part of that is my oh happy day game. It's my gratitude game, because there's a lot of people who say, how could you ever say that, you know, you could be positive, these people you love were killed and you can't walk and now you have this disease. You know what though? In those worst times, my eyes would open, locked in that fetal position, and my mom would come in and say, Lise, the sun is shining. And I would think, oh, this is great. It's something, I'm rich, the sun is shining. Or then she'd take me in my wheelchair. We had this tiny little balcony, and she bought a fuchsia plant. Have any of you ever really looked at the flower of a fuchsia? One of God's most amazing creations. You know, the color and how delicate and the shape. And then this hummingbird would come along and stick its nose into that fuchsia flower, and its wings were beating 100,000, beats, little flaps a minute, and I was rich. I was rich by the time I was done with my gratitude attitude list. One way to do the reframe. Keep your positive attitude. All right, with that positive attitude, with the courage, I was able to have, I think at this point I've had 7 different, no, it can't be right, it has to be a little bit more. I think 9 different joint implants put into me. I had my thymus removed. I've had immunoglobulin, IVIG treatments, have a lot of, still now I take prednisone and I take Mestinon every 3 hours, and I take some immunosuppressives that help both myasthenia gravis and rheumatoid arthritis. Here I am, Coraggio! All right, let me tell you something else that takes courage to do. It takes courage to have good health. And I have had dozens of people say to me, oh, how can you have good health? And they're like, oh, we're so sorry you have bad health. Stop it. I claim my good health. I am the person in charge of my good health. There's a lot of parts in me that are good. And there's a lot of energy and a lot of things that work that are good. And you know what? I am in charge of that. With courage, I can do that. And I have some limited time, and so I'm going to just give you 3 examples here. Eating, sleeping, exercise. Seems obvious, you're going to hear it over and over, but you're going to hear it from me too. Eating. It's so important for me to keep my weight down for rheumatoid arthritis. And for myasthenia gravis, I need every nutrient that comes in my body to be good and to be working toward helping me. So if I get into a myasthenic crisis, there's all these good nutrients and proteins all over my body ready to help out. They're part of my army. There is nobody tying my arms behind that dining room chair and force feeding me food. It's me. And this is hard because I'm an Italian foodie. Trust me. From the minute we landed in Baltimore, I want to get to Little Italy. It keeps calling me, cannoli, spaghetti and meatballs. I want to rush over there. But I know what that spaghetti and meatballs are going to do to me. I know what that cannoli is going to do to me. So what am I going to do here? My reframe is, you know what? Why don't I go in there? Why don't I just walk up and down the streets and smell the smells and take in the sights? And why don't I tell myself that I'll find the best biscotti there? It's low fat, get it with cranberries or something with antioxidants in it and vitamins and nuts for protein, and dip it in a little tea or something that doesn't have a lot of calories. Hey, that's great, I'm rich again, and I'm looking forward to it, and I know exactly who's going to take me there in about 48 hours. Okay, Coraggio, reframing. All right, so what about sleep? Now this is a question I want to ask every single one of you. how did we ever get in our country to this bragging thing about how little sleep it is, and somehow it's a badge of honor to say, yeah, well, I only got 5 hours of sleep last night and I already downed my 20-ouncer of Mountain Dew with caffeine and sugar. But think about it, we do. I almost never wanted to admit to anybody, you know, I need 9 hours of sleep every night to function. But really, I do. And we should, because that is the only time of the day that my body is rejuvenating and replenishing and the muscles are stocking up. And so why am I not going to do that for myself? It's so important. So I like to think of ways and things that help. For one thing, and this is for caregivers as well, you know, what do I need to do to make sure I'm getting my 9 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep? I can ask my family and loved ones, you know, please don't call me after 9 o'clock at night because I'll be sleeping. I'm so happy to talk to you any other time, but this is something that I really need, and you're always asking me what you could do to help me, and this is one thing you could do to help me. I can stop drinking caffeinated beverages, and people say, oh, caffeine doesn't affect me. Well, why not just try it? Try not to, substitute other things. Water's a great thing, as we've heard throughout the day. Some of the other things, this is for a person and caregiver, they'll say, oh, I'm so tired. You know, my favorite show doesn't get over until 11:30 at night. Devo, or whatever it is. If you're the caregiver, say, honey, you know, why don't we just Devo that? We can watch it tomorrow night or another night, something like that. And this other one is meant not to offend people, but I have several people tell me on a weekly basis, I'm so tired. My dog kept me up all night. He kept, you know, kicking me and everything. And you know, and I just say, maybe love your pets in another way. I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but really sleep is one of the most important things you could do to love yourself and to heal yourself. All right, let's move on to exercise. You think I was a little bit bold back just a sentence ago? I'm going to tell you that I think I have a better excuse than any person sitting in this room to not exercise. Think about it, I have this conundrum going on. With rheumatoid arthritis, they tell me if you don't move it, you're going to lose it because it's just going to lock up. With myasthenia gravis, they tell me don't move it because you will lose it, right? So I thought, you know, I could easily sit back and say, oh, sorry, I've got these two diseases, I can't exercise. Again, one way of loving myself, one way. If I keep my muscles strong, that's going to help me in any myasthenic crisis I have, right? And in my surgeries, you know, first of all, I want to point out that I don't know how many of you were with me this morning when we got up for our meditation, our exercise, but everyone deserves their little round of applause. And I challenge you to ask either Dr. Charlene or Nurse Wilma. I challenge you to say to them, there's nothing I could do to exercise, because there's always something you can do. Find the right physiotherapist, physical therapist, whatever it is, to help you. And that no matter what surgery I've had, I've always been able to find something. And you know, I think about 8 or 9 of those surgeries have been somewhere on the lower extremity where I couldn't step down from 2 weeks to 3 months. But if you get the right physical therapist or occupational therapist, there's many, many, many exercises you can do lying flat on the bed on your back. Just do it and find a way to do it. And speaking of surgeries, before my surgery is the time I like to really prime myself. So instead of being, you know, anxious about the surgery, I say, okay, I might not be running 5K marathons, but this is the marathon that I'm going to do. I am an Olympic trainer right now. I'm going to have surgery. I'm not going to be able to pull myself out of bed after my surgery because I have significant RA in my arms and I have an artificial elbow, but I'm going to need my core. So I focus all my Olympic training on my core, and it's just amazing how much easier it is after surgery to have all the core muscles in your back and in your front so strong that you could pull yourself up just by that core. It's great. All right. I thank all of you so much for going through those things that we can all do. We know that myasthenia is an autoimmune disease, works against us. We know that rheumatoid arthritis is as well. So I kind of think about that. I have cells in my body working against my body. How can I love myself? I want to love myself and that big cannoli waiting for me in Little Italy, right? No. I'm going to love myself. Last night, I didn't go out with people that I love and eat with them when I was invited. I went to bed. That was loving myself. Okay, I didn't turn on the TV, by the way, which I really wanted to because I don't have cable at home. But I didn't because I love myself, and that was more important. And I keep sending myself that message that I love myself. I love myself. Okay, so what are some other workarounds? I have to say that I'm part of the Three Musketeers for myasthenia gravis. Esther and Susie from our Great Lakes chapter, we went on a tour this fall. I think we had 5, 6, or 7 different support groups. It's amazing how many workarounds people have. It's amazing how many ways people with myasthenia have said, you know, I have myasthenia gravis, but here's what I can do. And here's my workaround to get there, or here's my reframe to get there. And one of the examples I like to give is Susie's mother loves to go to the movies. She gets double vision. She's very crafty, so she would crochet these little covers for one side of her glasses. I'm not so crafty. I took a baby sock and cut it, but you can see how really not crafty I am because I couldn't even cut it perfectly. But Susie's mom has one in the glove box, she has one in her purse, she has one in her pocket, so if she's somewhere and she has double vision, she just really kind of, you know, silently and quickly slips it on one of her frames of glasses, and she has this beautifully crocheted piece over one of her glasses. I met Michael at lunch. Michael loves driving. Michael loves his workaround. He told me, you're going to love this. So it's not the cut baby sock. It's not the lovely crocheted little cover. Michael is an electrical engineer. Guess what Michael used in his one lens so he continued driving? Electrical tape. Is that great? The perfect workaround. I love it. So, my message to you today about embracing myasthenia gravis is just, now I stop myself every time I'm about to say, you know, I have myasthenia gravis, so I cannot stop. I have myasthenia gravis, and I want to do this, so here's how I'm going to do it. So my challenge to all of you here today is to think about those reframes and think about the different workarounds you may have or you may need. And this is a wonderful place to gather to try and figure that out. I learned something from Michael I had never even thought of in my whole life. It's much better than the cut-off baby sock, the electrical tape. You know, with courage, you can. It's just figuring that out. So my challenge to you in this next week, it's only 7 days, think about it. Every time you're about to say, well, I have myasthenia gravis and I can't, stop yourself to say, yes, I have myasthenia gravis, but this is what brings me joy. And hey, this is how I'm going to think about it differently so I have joy while I'm doing the part of it I can do. Or I have myasthenia gravis and I can't really do as much. No. I have myasthenia gravis and I can have a workaround, and yeah, that's the way I could do it. Yeah, then I'll have purpose and joy in my life. So think about those things. And with everybody here talking with each other, you know, what do you do when you have this? How do you make it work? Great, great, great resource. I have my books. I have several books out on there, and Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America, especially Sam, inviting me to be here today, are incredibly generous. It's not about making money for me. The books are priced at $14 because the cost of printing and the graphic artist and the editor who went through it, it's pretty much a wash for me, but it's just about spreading this message of encouragement and hope. So I'm happy to sign and inscribe one for anybody out there too, and happy to discuss with them. I'm going to be here all the way until the end of the conference. Okay, so a little bit of recap. Our Italian 101. How are we going to get through this next week? With uno, due, tre, coraggio! Yes. And with courage, I can. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me.